Full Moon Radio. This is Chris Barenko here with Ian Mills, and today we're covering Charley Crockett's album Dollar a Day. But before we get into that, how's it going, Ian?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Did you watch that Bears game last night? That was crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad I stayed up for it. I didn't think it was gonna end like that.
Yeah, that might be a little bit dated depending on when this releases, but crazy NFL game last night. But that's not what this podcast is about. We're a folk, country, rock, kind of all the above music podcast where we cover different artists each week. And this week we're covering Charley Crockett, as mentioned. If you're a Charley Crockett fan and you've stumbled across this episode, welcome. Definitely contribute in the comments because we'd love to hear from you, as you might be more familiar with Charley's music than at least I am. Ian, you're probably a little more familiar with Charley Crockett than I am. So why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, Charlie Crockett, aka the $10 Cowboy, is a Texas-born country singer-songwriter. Um, Maybe a little bit stylistically different than the country-ish albums we've reviewed so far. Um, More, I think, has a character that he plays in terms of this like hyper sort of uh, musician cowboy. Um, And yeah, Dollar a Day is his 16th, I believe, studio album.
Thought I read 15th. It's either 15th
See
or
that's
16th.
what people say. So I know you checked Wikipedia and Wikipedia says 15th, but that's
Right.
wrong. I didn't count, but he says it's his 16th. And also
Wow.
in the liner notes for Lonesome Drifter, which is his album before this one, Dollar a Day. Don't remember if I said that. Um, he says that's one his 15th. So I believe this is his 16th. Definitely more productive than a lot of the artists we've covered so far. Also, a little bit more of a late bloomer that he released Lonesome Drifter in March of this year with his first album on uh I forget which record label, Island Records,
Mhm.
um, and then released this one in August of this year, um, producing both with Shooter Jennings, who is Waylon Jennings' son, and like I said, this is number 15 and 16. So he's put out a lot over the past decade that I've been a fan of a lot of his albums so far.
Mhm.
And this one is a the middle of a trilogy. So he approached Island to wanting to do a series of albums that he calls the Sagebrush trilogy. The
Mhm.
first being Lonesome Drifter, came out earlier this year. This album, Dollar a Day, is the second one, and then a third one coming out, I think maybe next year. Um, and he talks about how he was approaching these record labels wanting to do a trilogy that based on his interview for the Grammys about this album that he had approached Island and they hadn't heard any of it so far, which is what he wanted. And he said he wanted to release a lot of effort, a lot of albums, and the chairman of Island Records said like, well, was it something like, what if it was like more like Cormac McCarthy's Border trilogy, which is
Saw that.
a trilogy of books, All the Pretty Horses, The Crossing, and Stays of the Plain, which is about cowboys in the American Southwest, kind of themes that a lot of like Cormac McCarthy does. And I have The Crossing right
No
here. I don't
way.
know if it's gonna let me see them on my TBR for next year.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and he mentions that this is similar to what he was thinking. He being Charlie Crockett was he wanted to do something to Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, which is like the um, not maybe the full origin, but certainly the popularization of like the spaghetti western style movies, A Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More, and the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, so he talks about how he's thinking that about all that already and talking with Shooter about like what are the themes that he wanted to do over the course of like an album trilogy more than just like a single record. And that's how they come up with Lonesome Drifter, which is like a character showing up,
Right.
in Nashville, and it broadly speaks to themes that he's been doing even before this. in terms of like almost sort of like a meta-analysis of what like country music is and sort of playing the character of a 60s and 70s country musician, but also sort of subverting it with more like funk and blues and other genres as well. Um, so yeah, with that context, maybe we can get into the album.
Yeah, that was an excellent introduction. I also came across all the trilogy and the Cormac McCarthy references, and I thought that was really neat. So I'm glad that you mentioned that right away. But let's just start talking about some of the songs. We start out with Dollar a Day. This was written by Dick Glasser and Vincent Lepar. I'm not sure if Charlie had any writing credits on it as well, but um, this is a shorter song to introduce the album. It's very reflective, and I think it's kind of autobiographical. Biographical, is that the word? In a
Hmm.
sense, because I saw this interview that I'm going to reference a lot throughout this podcast in the magazine Cowboys and Indians. Did you come across that when you were reading about the album?
I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay. I used it as like source material for a lot of what I'm going to talk about. So great article through the Cowboys and Indians magazine. Charley Crockett and the Age of the Ram is the name of it. And it talks about how he spent years as a street performer, a busker, an open mic regular. He squatted, hitched, worked on cannabis farms. He has a really interesting background, this blue collar kind of country music. And I think that kind of played into this song Dollar a Day, just like chipping away at it. That's kind of my take on it. What do you think about this song?
Yeah, so um obviously title track. I even before we got into the trilogy part that I read about that, like my mind for the album and the song is like going back to the Dollars trilogy. Um,
Mm,
um, yeah, so I guess I forgot to mention introducing the album that like it's very like quick. The songs are short. It's a 45, a little over 45-minute total length for the album with 15 tracks. Um, And what's notable is a lot of these songs aren't written by him, including the title track.
right.
Um, and that was like one of the big things I saw about the album was a lot just to like get these albums out. That Lonesome Drifter was written in 10 days, and this one, I don't think we have like an actual day count, but like assuming it's pretty similar, that there's a lot more writers that aren't him on this album. Um, yeah,
Few
I thought it was
covers
interesting.
too.
Yeah, I caught one cover. It was a little harder to find. I'm curious to see if there's any more that I missed, but we'll get into it. Um, yeah, I think the album kind of starts out like a little bit more just like country acoustic, I think, which I thought was interesting. Um, um, and yeah, I think it's a good start to the album, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. We get into the second track, which is more of the kickoff of the album, in my opinion, because it's like the full band experience, and that's Crucified Sun. This has kind of Southern rock vibes. Um, and here's a quote from Charlie Crockett that I felt like related to the song a little bit. He says, "The most important thing he's done is defended who I am. Mostly, I've really avoided bad mistakes that compromise who you are as a person. When dealing with a business opportunity, when they say, here, we can fast track you, here's some easy money. I felt like that kind of related to the song a little bit. So I really like this article through Cowboys and Indians magazine that I'm going to keep referencing because it kind of tied together a lot of his personal experiences with what I was hearing on the record. What did you think about Crucified Son?
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting. This was what I was expecting for the sound, I would say, and that's why I mentioned just like the more acoustic song with the first track, that this is more like the Crockett sound, um, written by him, or at least the idea came up with him and his wife Taylor Grace, who's also a musician.
Right.
Um, I thought it was interesting that this was the most popular song by streaming. Like it's pretty clearly like almost 50% higher than the next song by plays on Spotify. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think you covered the conceptual parts of it.
Yeah.
Not what I expected to be the most played, and also not the most talked about either. So I thought that was interesting.
Right. I think was this a single from the album? Do you know that?
Um, I I know All Around Cowboy was one signal.
Okay, because I was just gonna say that could play into why it was more streamed. But it might not have been, but it definitely sounds like a single, the
Yeah,
sound
so
of
it
it.
was. I guess they do count on Spotify the streams from the single as well on the album.
Hmm. Well, we go into the next song, Woman in a Bar, and I really love this song. It's one of the highlights for me, probably off the album. I love the slow piano that delicately hovers over the track. Lyrically, it's pretty straightforward narrative of being captivated by a woman in a bar. Kind of what you were saying, like going back to playing a character in like an old West film. It kind of gives you that vibe. What'd you think about the song?
Yeah, I really like this. This was curious to me. So this is why I made the distinction of like Crucified Son was the most popular by like plays, at least on
Right.
Spotify. That this song was the song that was definitely the most talked about,
Oh,
both
really?
like looking at just like Reddit threads and sort of album reviews and press for the album. That this was the song that I saw like most mentioned, which is interesting because it's also not even the most played by plays on the album. Like there's songs on this album that aren't really talked about that are more played than this. So I thought it was interesting. I did like this. It's sort of going back to the first track where it's just him and the guitar,
Hmm.
a little bit off theme from what he normally does. And also again a pretty shorter song. Like all these songs are well, I guess Crucified Son was a little over, but this one and Dollar Day both under 3 minutes. Um,
Yeah.
which is sort of how this album goes.
Right. Yeah, I really liked it, Woman in a Bar, and that's one that I'll find myself listening to after this podcast episode because I hadn't listened to this album before we decided to do it for the podcast. So it's nice to come away with a few takeaway songs that I know I'll add to my rotation, and that's definitely one of them. Next song is Ain't That Right. I saw some people online, also on Reddit threads, talking about how this gives a Waylon Jennings vibe, which makes total sense because you mentioned that Shooter Jennings was a producer, the producer or a producer on the album.
Co-producer with Charlie.
Oh, okay, cool. I always like that when artists like produce their own record. I think that's pretty neat. Um, I'm not too familiar enough with Waylon Jennings myself to make that comparison, but I just thought it was worth noting because of the connection with Shooter Jennings. Um, what do you think about the song?
Yeah, so I think this was the one that was more, I guess, the first one that kind of directly tied to the theme of the album. The theme of the album to me is like it's twofold. Like it's like the his feelings and then what he's trying to do, sort of like you know, subverting sort of country tropes. Where the
Hmm.
first part is like going on tour
Hmm.
of like always being on the road. He talks about, I think in the same Grammy interview that I read, um, talking to Willie Nelson and being like being on the road all the time is hard. And obviously the song starting out with like blew into Austin from Denver yesterday. Got word from my manager, didn't want to stay.
Hmm.
Um, that a lot of this album is sort of like traveling, going somewhere else, ending up in a different city, both in the context of like him as an artist, but also maybe in some other things. We'll get into that in a couple other songs.
Right.
Um, so like we're still in the intro of the album. I think a lot of different concepts kind of being introduced, but I think this was the first song that introduced sort of that theme.
Right. I think we both picked up on that, how it's drawing a lot from his personal experiences as a traveling musician. And that definitely shows up more throughout the album. Next song is Lone Star. This is a gritty, swaggering sound. It's got some pretty sweet guitar to it. This reminded me of what I've heard from Charley Crockett before. I've listened to the Man from Waco album probably a couple times through, and this kind of felt similar to that in terms of the kind of atmospheric, like cinematic, because that album is very cinematic too. I know that's not part of this trilogy, but that has a theme to it, and there's a theme to this album that we'll get into in a few tracks. So even though that this concept of the trilogy is like kind of a new development in his career progression, it's stuff that he's been doing throughout his. The sound has carried over throughout his career. What'd you think about Lone Star?
Yeah, I really like this song. I think it's my favorite song on the album. I don't
Really?
know. I haven't really. I'm still thinking about it, but I think so. I'm surprised that you think this is like I didn't I thought this was like a little bit more of a departure from his normal
Okay.
sound. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it's fair to say it is that it does sound like his previous stuff. I think it's more like a more further example. I mean, like, so what Charlie tries to do, I think, in a lot of his songs is have, like we talked about, like sort of like the classic country, especially like the red dirt kind of Texas country vibe, but then sort of subverting it with like blues and other genre.
Mm,
I thought this was really funky, like a really heavy funk sound.
right.
Um, so I think it's the same dynamic, but like maybe pushing it more towards the other genre than what he normally does. Um, but yeah, I really like the song. I made a note to learn like the guitar tag at the end. I thought it sounded really good. Um,
Mm,
and yeah, and I think it's sort of so one thing w- um looking into what he was talking about for this album and the trilogy um is sort of him talking more about like the Lonesome Drifter as a character for this
right.
album. And I feel like this is a song where it's sort of starting to mention that. Something I didn't really pick up on first listen, but now that I heard him talk about, I'm going back and re-looking at the lyrics.
Yeah, I'll have to listen to it again to pick up on that. But yeah, it's definitely a cool song, and I like your analysis of it. El Paso to Denver is the next song, and this is definitely up there with one of my favorite songs on the album. Co-written with his wife Taylor Grace, who you mentioned is also a musician. Um, there's the lyrics I thought I heard Waylon in the cool of the night. Again, another reference to Waylon Jennings. But just the sound of this song, kind of the slow, easy swing to it. Um, I really just thought it was a nice tune, and it's definitely one that I'll be adding again to my rotation. This and Woman in a Bar so far are the ones that I've kind of flagged as songs that I'll be listening to moving forward. But enough about me. What do you think about it?
Yeah, so this is one where I'm sort of going back and rethinking. This is sort of like the dual meaning, I think. Another one that's about like based on what he said, like about touring El Paso to Denver.
Sure.
Um, um, the lyrics go in like, "I've got bills to pay to stay in the game. I thought
Right.
I heard Waylon in the cool of the night saying, 'Boy, you'll be fine.' El Paso to Denver one more time." I thought this was more like an outlaw country song, like a drug runner or someone like smuggling, talking about like I don't want to be in the game anymore, but I got bills to pay, so like I gotta do what I gotta do. Which I think is in part somewhat true. That it's sort of like he's talking about his direct experience, being a musician and having to tour and travel,
Mm-hmm.
but also kind of winning into the early kind of outlaw country tropes.
Right. I was reading a Rolling Stone review of the album, and they said that it plays like a mashup of a soundtrack to a spaghetti western and a 1970s crime film. So that
Mhm.
touches on what you were just saying, kind of that crime aspect, crime film narrative to it.
Yeah, and there's one more part of the song that I wrote down. I couldn't. It hits me as a Grateful Dead lyric, two parts. I don't know. I mean, it's so later on in the song, it's if you ain't been bought, then you're probably getting sold. They'll make you want to fold. Greatest story ever told. I've been writing this country. Obviously, greatest story ever told is I
Hmm.
don't know if it's like directly a Grateful Dead reference, but obviously like similar to a Grateful Dead song. Um, but it had me thinking like if you ain't been bought, then you're probably getting sold is like obviously like a common theme probably in folk and country, but it just strikes me as a Grateful Dead lyric, and I can't really think of like what song it would come from. But
It also is very similar to Culture Wall's new album that we covered,
yeah.
um, where he talks about how he never sold. If you think I've been bought, I never sold. Some lyric like that, very
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, obviously a common theme in this sort of music.
Right.
Um, I'm just kind of thinking of it like if you play nice, you'll harvest wind type of lyric from
Sure.
the Dead.
You had to mention your weekly Grateful Dead reference, so
Yeah, well, someone had to do it.
someone had to do it. It's usually you because you're a little more informed than I am. But that's cool. I like that. And next song, Santa Fe Ring, which is a very atmospheric Western outlaw ballad. This is a real big soundtrack type song to me. I was getting definitely spaghetti Western vibes on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, so this was one where I was like, it sort of solidified my thoughts on El Paso to Denver. I was like, okay, this is sort of like the
Sure.
continuation and sort of like the end of like um I yeah, that was my first note. It sounds like old Western.
Yeah.
They sold me out to the Santa Fe Ring, but they'll never catch me. I'm too fast. Um, yeah, like I don't know. It this seems more like the Western sort. I think there's something to read into with his experience with touring. Maybe something like how he wants to. The song is about like ending, right? Like when my
Hmm.
time is come and the working is all done, I'll be on my way into the setting sun. Like maybe some of like how he envisions sort of ending this album run and maybe like retiring or something. I don't know. But
Hmm.
yeah, like when I was listening to it, I was thinking more along the lines of like Western. Um, yeah.
Yeah. The next song is Age of the Ram, which is an instrumental track. It's a theme, and this obviously sounds like a theme from an Old West movie. The composer, the writer is Stephen Barber. He's from Texas, so there's the connection to Charley Crockett there. Again, this isn't the first time Charlie has played around with the theme components to his albums. Of course, that fits the whole trilogy vibe, having a theme in the album. But he did this on The Man from Waco and probably other albums as well. I haven't listened to all his discography, but I really liked this. I think this will go on like my writing playlist when I'm
Mhm.
writing fiction, like having this playing in the background because it's a nice instrumental song. But it's interesting that it comes right in the middle of the album too, instead of like towards the beginning or even at the end. But to put the theme right in the middle has to be intentional. I don't know what it means, but interesting placement for it. What do you think about the theme for this album, Age of the Ram?
Yeah, just like a little bit of an interlude.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I mean, very, very on theme for like the spaghetti western type of um
Right.
thing he's trying to do here, like an Ennio Morricone style
Yeah.
western theme. Do you know any more about like Age of the Ram? I didn't really think about it much, but the song title, but it sounds like the article you were reading has was similar.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't. I'm just gonna be honest and not try to make something up on the spot, but I'll definitely go back to that article and see if there's any more references to what that actually means because it is interesting. It's unique. It's not like Lonesome Drifter theme or something like that. It's Age of the Ram, and I don't know what it means to be honest, but curious to know. So if anyone's listening and you know what that means, drop it in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast app, leave a review and let us know what it means. Um, but yeah, it's a good question. The next song is I Stay Ready. This was written by Anthony Farrell, who I couldn't find much about online. Were you able to dig up any more information about the origins of this song? It's
No.
one I don't have a ton of notes on, to be honest. It's nice, but I don't have like a ton on this one.
Yeah, so it's like I was curious this one being a cover or not, because I don't know for sure, but um, I was looking through the songs that had different, writers and people attributed to it.
Sure.
So I'm not sure. Like it's like a little bit more. This is almost like a more modern like interlude, sort of like the Age of the Ram was like very much like a cinematic interlude theme,
Hmm.
big orchestra band type of composition.
Right.
This seems like something that plays a similar role, but more modern, just keeping it as like
Hmm.
more of a regular track. So I thought it was interesting. It came right after Age of the Ram. That's all I really wrote for it. I don't really have much to say on this one.
Yeah. We go into All Around Cowboy, which this one is definitely a cover written by J.W. Ralph and Len Pollard. covered by Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings and some other country artists as well. So I find it interesting that he's constructing a narrative with these three albums, the third one being unreleased so far, but Lonesome Drifter and Dollar a Day. And he's also including covers on the albums. I think that's pretty neat how he's finding opportunities to work in covers to kind of paint a picture of this kind of Old West Lonesome Drifter, things that we have talked about. But it's not all originals. So it's just kind of neat that he's identifying opportunities for some covers in these albums too.
Yeah, so I was trying to untangle uh this one that I think it was written for Johnny Cash.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure. I think the first time I saw it was on Johnny Cash's Look at Them Beans album. Um, and then Waylon Jennings covered it the next year. So Johnny Cash in
Uh,
75, Waylon Jennings 76 for like a movie, I think. Um, I don't know. I was like trying to think about like how it's bouncing around. I didn't really have too much time to spend on it.
mhm.
But yeah, definitely a cover. Waylon Jennings again, kind of in line with Shooter Jennings, and also mentions on the album and like general stylistic things. There's
Right.
also a Marty Robbins song of the same name, but definitely different song with like different lyrics. So,
Oh, I didn't know that.
um,
That's a cool
yeah.
pull. Next one is Tennessee Quick Cash, and this was a fun one. It's definitely, I would say, the most lively on the album. Might be a take, but a little more honky tonk vibes. His first of two songwriting collaborations on the album with co-producer Shooter Jennings. Um, and this definitely has some reference to, I'm sure, Nashville and the music industry. But you're better at interpreting the songs than I am. What do you think about Tennessee Quick Cash?
Yeah, I don't think I liked it that much. I don't
Really?
know. I don't think I'm gonna be like super critical of it. I don't think this wasn't an album or sorry, not an album. Single, I don't believe. Um, so one of the most played on the album.
Mm.
Um, yeah, one of the most played. Also at 4 minutes and 12 seconds, the longest song on the album. Um, I thought this was like a more getting towards pop country. Or
Right.
it felt like the not even pop country. I guess sort of pop country, but like more some country elements on top of like a pop rock song almost. Like I
Okay.
thought the drums and percussion on this were very more like a pop
Mm.
rock sort of type with like the slide sort of country guitar on top. Um so it seemed to be at least the backing more formulated to sound like pop country. Um
Yeah.
So it's also interesting, I think, that this is probably the most played on the album, not counting the ones that were singles as well. Um,
Right. It's
so
funny. I
I
saw.
which I think is the point. Like the whole song is about like, oh, you need some quick money,
Right.
some fast cash. So make this pop country song that's gonna get played a lot and pay you out. So I think that's sort of the point. Um, but honestly, like I don't know, like
Yeah, it's totally
just
fine. And
yeah.
there's 15 tracks on the album. Not everyone's gonna strike you and be your favorite. So I think that's good analysis though. And it's funny because I did read a review that said something like they struck pop country gold on this song, which is kind of what you were saying. That may have been the intent of it, and it goes back to the title of the song and kind of the theme of the lyrics. So maybe there was some of that. Hey, let's make a more of a pop song here. Um, but it gives the album a little bit of life. I don't dislike the song, um, but it's not one of my favorites either from the record. Anything else to say on that before we go on to the next song? We're getting into the back half of the album here.
Um, no, I think I'm good on that one.
Okay, cool. Die With My Dreams On. This is another cover. This one was by Rich Minus. I looked up a little bit about him. He died in 2016, but he was honored by the Texas Songwriters Association in 2015 in the debut class of the Texas Songwriters Hall of Fame, which I don't think he's there already, but Charley Crockett will definitely make the Texas Songwriters Hall of Fame. Um, I mean, I don't think he's been like formally nominated yet. I think his repertoire is definitely good enough to be in it already. But so local legend for Charley to honor with this song. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I this was the one I didn't get to look to see if it was a cover. So
Hmm.
definitely gonna re-listen with that in mind. I love the
Hmm.
horns on it. I feel like this one is um
Hmm.
what I like from Charlie of like I also need to listen to the Rich Minus version just to see like how much it's interpreted. Um
Sure.
but this is what I like of like a country song obviously like having a little bit of other stylistic influence. So I don't know. I did like for this, especially coming out of the previous song. I like this is more like canonically what I like from Charlie Crockett.
Cool. That's interesting too, that it's a cover, but it sounds more like what you kind of think of when you think of Charlie Crockett, because it definitely fits his style. The next song is Ballad of a Lonesome Drifter, which obviously a tie into the character that has showed up throughout this album and songs probably like Woman in a Bar or El Paso, maybe to Denver. And the album Lonesome Drifter, of course, which is the first of the trilogy. It's a short song, like many of the others on the album, but like lyrically, it's a short story. He just kind of rolls in, and it just kind of is a portrait of this drifter. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, so like obviously like more self-referential to the album,
Mhm.
and what he's trying to do on this album run. Um, I thought it was a weird place for it just because like, you know, this is pretty much the end of the album and almost the end of like thematically what he's trying to do here.
Mhm.
Um, so sort of get like the character profile sort of at the end. Um, obviously like a stylistic choice.
Mhm.
And again, like you said, a pretty short song, under 3 minutes, just under 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, I was looking at the song trying to think. As we said, there's sort of like the two sides of like the um touring musician part and then like sort of the outlaw country. This feels more of the latter.
Right.
But trying to look through the lyrics and see how we can relate it to the touring stuff he's been talking about.
Yeah. Um, Next song is Destroyed, which is another cover. Did you catch that one?
No, it makes sense though.
Yeah, written by Dan Penn and Spooner Oldham, which is a bit of a throwback. I think the original song was written or recorded somewhere between 63 and 1966. So again, going back to kind of the 60s, 70s character that Charlie's playing. Um, it's a cool song. I actually haven't listened to the original, so that's on me. But I think he adds a lot of life to this song. It's like pretty rocking. Kind of reminds me of Tennessee Quick Cash in a way. It's like a livelier song. But what'd you think about Destroyed?
Um, Yeah, so this one I picked up that it was like different than the other songs too. Yeah, I also related it to Tennessee Quick Cash. I
Hmm.
said it was like the most off genre of like what I think of Charlie Crockett.
Sure.
Um, it makes a lot of sense that it's like an older song. I'm curious to see how much it's similar to um um
Original.
the original. Yeah.
Right.
I thought it was similar, like also like more pop country. Um, and I don't know, it just felt kind of. I don't really know what we're doing here in terms of like kind of going back between um the like Ballad of the Lonesome Drifter of like a very like in the album like referential to the album and then
Hmm.
something like this. um I guess something that's like more kind of like in universe than reference to what he's trying to do here. Yeah, I don't know.
Alrighty, and so we're at the final track of the album, which is Alamosa, I believe you pronounce it. This is a collaboration with Shooter Jennings and Kyle Madrigal. Cool, punchy bass line on this song. Drops the lyrics. It was the age of the ram, tying back to the theme from earlier, closing us out, wrapping everything up with a nice bow. I liked the song. I thought it was very atmospheric, a little dark, a little edgy to end the album. But what'd you think?
Yeah, so this is why I was kind of confused about the past song because this feels like the correct ending to the album. I think it's very on theme to what was done before, before all the covers. So Alamosa town in Colorado, talking
Yeah,
about traveling again. Um, yeah, I really liked it. I felt like this was like a good end to the album, I would say.
I'd agree.
Um,
There were some cool
uh,
strings to it as well, which was a little unique.
yeah, kind of talking about love. I guess there was some like woman in a
Yeah.
bar type song. Although this feels kind of different. I'm going to Alamosa, back in the saddle once again. Bought a blue rose in Rudosa because my true love wanted her one. I don't know, talking about it like a little differently than I feel like in different songs.
Right.
Um,
Back in the saddle once again's a lyric in Dollar a Day, right? So it kind of like ties us back to the beginning in that sense as well.
yeah, but it feels different in terms of like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels a little bit more hopeful. It feels a little bit more like looking to the future than I think the other songs did. I think we're more trying to get out of what was going on. Um, I don't know.
Mhm.
I like this song, and I think it's a good end of the album.
Yeah. I think as a standalone album, it's a good record. It very much fits what I think of with Charlie Crockett, so it's similar to his other records. But I'm curious to see how it plays into the whole trilogy theme. So I'm gonna go listen through Lonesome Drifter, and then when the new album comes out, we should definitely cover that and see again how this plays into the larger picture of a trilogy. But alone, I mean, it sounds like a Charlie Crockett album. What do you think of it as a standalone record?
Um, I'm fine with it. I don't think it's too bad. I do
Mhm.
think I'm gonna try to be more harsh on albums now that we're doing a
Sure.
lot because
Yeah.
every album
Not
can't be
every
okay. I
album
think it's
can be
fine.
great. Yeah. That's fair.
I think it's obvious that this stuff is being put out like pretty quickly.
Mm,
Um, and I don't really vibe with having like a bunch of 3 minute tracks. I felt like
mm,
some of this stuff wasn't maybe in the right order. I love the overall concept. I like the three album series that are like thematically similar. And I
mm.
liked a lot of songs on this album, but it felt like there was some stuff that could have been refined a little better or reorganized in the album order. Um, I think there's a lot of similarities between Charlie Crockett and Lord Huron, where that we've been covering Lord Huron a lot,
Hmm.
where they're very interested in sort of more multimedia
Right.
conceptions of the themes that they're interested in. One thing I didn't know that I found out looking into stuff about this album was that I don't know if it's official or he's still just in talks, but Charlie Crockett's gonna do a movie on his $10 Cowboy album.
That's so
So
cool.
I think he does a lot of like sort of thematic videos for different songs, and I think he's overall very interested in like more just the albums of like doing more stuff like that. So I'm very excited to see those projects. But yeah, I think I like this album. I like the ambition for the themes, but I feel like the two albums in a year is maybe unnecessarily fast for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'm probably a little more positive on the album because I really like the like conceptual exploration of like the like you were saying, like the multimedia aspect of it, I think is really cool. And I'm fine with kind of the free and loose tracks, releasing two albums a year. I definitely understand that that might take away. But I feel like as someone who likes to be creative, I tend to fall more into this category of like, let me just do something and put it out and move on to the next thing and explore new ideas and new concepts. So I kind of can relate to the like the ambition of like just like moving on and doing something new. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah.
I kind of can see where he's coming from, and I think I'm a little more maybe I'm less also familiar with Charlie Crockett's work than you are, so to me, like this album's like my first entry point kind of into his world. So you've already been in that world, so you've had more time to soak it in and everything and can compare it to those past records. But to me, it's like a new experience. So I liked it. But I like how I think covering a lot more different artists and a lot of different albums, we have to look at it with a critical eye and be objective about what we're listening to, because we can't just come on this podcast every week and be like, that was the greatest thing ever, because I have a tendency
Yeah.
to do that, I think. So I like how you're looking at it with a fair approach. And I think what you're saying is completely reasonable. So I'm glad we listened. It was a good album. And we'll definitely cover Charley Crockett again, I'm sure, once he wraps up this trilogy.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited to see how he sort of ends this album run.
Right. Alrighty, awesome. Well, we're gonna release a new episode again, hopefully soon. We missed this last Friday, but we're gonna put this out real soon and keep us on track here going into 2026. So thanks for hanging along with us this year. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time on Old Moon Radio.